Winn-Dixie Stores is a supermarket chain that started in 1925. Thank you for your suggestion.
Winn-Dixie tracks down the best deals, then uses volume buying power to lower the price even more. That's why they're called power buys.
Get a power buy on Aero detergent with bleach, just $1.29. Get a six-pack of Czech drinks, power buy price 99 cents. And pick up jumbo rolls of Sunbelt paper towels, just 43 cents. Winn-Dixie, low prices nobody can beat.
Winn-Dixie's founder, William M. Davis, was the owner of an old-fashioned general store in Burley, Idaho, when he bought it in 1914. He would rename it Davis Mercantile. His general store was built up by Davis and his sons, Artemus Darius Davis, James Ellsworth Davis, Milton Austin Davis, and Tyne Wayne Davis. As was common then, he sold most goods on credit. During the 1920s, the advent of self-serve cash and carry chain stores after the war drove many old-fashioned independent grocers out of business. It was hard to compete with companies who offered lower prices and larger selection. Davis, however, saw the potential of this new kind of grocery store. He moved his family to Miami, Florida, and borrowing $10,000, entered the self-serve grocery business. He bought his first store, the Rockmore Grocery, in the Miami suburb of Lemon City in 1925. Davis and his wife and their 4 sons ran the store. In the early years, Davis found it difficult to expand. 3 times he attempted to open a second store, and 3 times the store failed. Chain stores had demonstrated their ability to deliver a wide variety of high-quality goods at lower prices than had ever before been possible, but many traditional-bound consumers preferred the old way of doing business. Independent grocers had local support and political connections, but life could be made rather difficult for a chain store or supermarket operator. After consumers' initial resistance were overcome, however, it was impossible to deny that supermarkets were the wave of the future. In 1927, the company was renamed Table Supply and 4 more stores were opened. In 1931, the Davis family bought the Lively Stores chain for $10,000 to create a chain of 33 Table Supply stores across Florida from Miami to Tampa. By 1934, the year W.M. Davis died, the Rockmore Grocery had spawned 34 Table Supply stores, as they were called, in South Florida. Davis's 4 sons took control of the company at their father's death and set out on a course of further expansion. In 1939, they acquired the control of 78 stores of the Winn & Lovett Grocery Company of Florida and Georgia. And in 1944, the company established its headquarters in Jacksonville, Florida, and officially adopted the Winn & Lovett name. The war years brought a lull in the supermarket industry. Food rationing, labor shortages, and price increases forced supermarkets to tighten their belt with the rest of the nation. Winn & Lovett, along with most of the supermarket industry, cooperated with the government by maintaining a lid on prices during and immediately following the war. During this time, non-food products filled what would otherwise have been empty shelves and began to assume a more prominent place in supermarkets. The higher profit margins on non-food products allowed supermarkets to maintain food prices at relatively low levels without jeopardizing overall profitability. Winn & Lovett picked up where it had left off before the war, adding in 1955 several more grocery chains in Florida and the Deep South to its company rolls. In October of 1955, Winn & Lovett bought the 116-store Dixie Home Stores chain based in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, and then changed its name to Winn-Dixie. The company had nearly 400 stores by this point. The Winn & Lovett and Margaret Ann names were dropped in Southeast Florida, and the Quick Check name was adopted for more than 50 stores on the lower East Coast. With this merger, Winn-Dixie broke into the top 10 supermarket chains and from the 1950s to the 1960s was the most profitable company in the industry. Profits in the supermarket industry are more dependent on high volume than high profit margins, but Winn-Dixie's profit margins in this period were exceptionally high. This was due to both an increase in sales, fourfold between 1954 and 1964, and lower labor costs in the non-union South. Winn-Dixie continued to expand and prosper in the 1960s, acquiring the Kettner and Milner stores in the Carolinas and the Hill stores in Louisiana and Alabama. Winn-Dixie not only acquired more retail outlets, but also branched out into processing, manufacturing, and distribution, producing a wide variety of store brand products from these support facilities. The Federal Trade Commission had been investigating the increasing concentration in the supermarket industry and had concluded that mergers and acquisitions in the industry had unfairly limited competition in violation of the Clayton Antitrust Act. As a result, the FTC ruled that for 10 years, Winn-Dixie was forbidden to acquire any retail grocery stores in the U.S. without FTC approval. Winn-Dixie used that 10-year period for internal expansion, adding stores by leasing new stores and improving existing retail and support facilities. When the ban was lifted in 1976, Winn-Dixie acquired the 135 stores and support facilities of the Buddy's supermarket chain. They had locations in Texas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico. In 1984, the company opened its first Winn-Dixie Marketplace in Georgia. By the late 1980s, management implemented measures to cut operating costs and raise gross profit margins. Management costs were also pared. Winn-Dixie began selling off its smaller, less efficient stores and also unloaded some of its less productive baking facilities. In January of 1990, Winn-Dixie abandoned the acquisition of the 24 B&B Cash grocery stores in the Tampa, Florida area that had been announced the previous October. The chain quickly became the low-price leader within the markets it served. Keeping prices low helped Winn-Dixie compete in the increasingly crowded markets. They would increase the size of its stores. During the previous decade, the company had increased average store size from 22,000 square feet in 1982 to 30,000 square feet in 1989. It had also introduced larger 44,000 square foot marketplace stores, which were grocery stores with the addition of such services as pharmacies and photo finishing. About 55 marketplaces had been built by the end of the 1980s. Winn-Dixie increased its store sizes even further, renovated or closed hundreds of its older and smaller stores, and altered the layout and conception of the marketplace stores. Winn-Dixie actually had fewer stores in its chain in 1996 of 1,178 than in 1991 with 1,207. Thanks to a large number of older stores, it closed. The company spent large sums of money on renovations and new store openings. By 1996, there were 504 marketplaces in the chain compared to 634 Winn-Dixies, and many of these larger format stores included a food pavilion, which was a large single aisle featuring a bakery, produce, deli, a combination meat-seafood service area, and a sit-down eating area. In June of 2000, the FTC blocked the acquisition of 74 Winn-Dixie locations in Texas and Oklahoma by Kroger. During that time, the chain was having financial troubles. Winn-Dixie underwent a major restructuring, announcing in April of 2000 that it was cutting 11,000 jobs and closing 114 stores. It faced significant competition from Walmart, with many stores overlapping, and needed to make major investments in order to modernize. In October of 2000, it acquired Jitney Jungle, which had 106 grocery stores, gas stations, and liquor stores at the time. Winn-Dixie would end up purchasing only 68 stores after the FTC interceded and limited the sale due to concerns over competition in certain areas of Florida, Mississippi, and Alabama. In May of 2002, Winn-Dixie announced it was closing 76 stores, which was all of its stores in Texas and Oklahoma, and laying off 5,000 employees. The financial problems continued as the company was closing stores and selling others. In April of 2004, Winn-Dixie announced the closure of 156 stores, including 21 stores under the Thriftway Stores in Cincinnati, and the elimination of 10,000 jobs. By July, Winn-Dixie agreed to sell several Thriftway locations to Kroger, Remke Markets, and big supermarkets. Another 40 stores in the Atlanta area were converted to a Save Right Grocery warehouse brand as an alternative to store closure. In October, the company sold 10 stores in North Carolina and Virginia to Food Lion. On February 22, 2005, Winn-Dixie filed for bankruptcy. The company adjusted its store hours and stopped 24/7 service. It announced a sale or closure of 326 stores and the elimination of 22,000 store positions and 500 corporate employees. The company exited out of the markets in the Carolinas, Tennessee, Texas, and Virginia, as well as the Atlanta market. Winn-Dixie's had locations to the Bahamas as well as 5 of the Deep South states, including Florida, Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, and parts of Georgia. The company emerged from Chapter 11 protection on November 21, 2006. In 2010, Winn-Dixie closed 30 underperforming stores. Winn-Dixie discontinued its use of the name Save Right in 2011. In 2012, Winn-Dixie was sold to Bi-Lo for $530 million, becoming a subsidiary of Bi-Lo, but its stores would continue to operate under the Winn-Dixie name. The combined company operated 750 stores in 7 southeastern states, employing approximately 63,000 employees. On October 8, 2013, Bi-Lo acquired the Sweet Bay supermarket chain and rebranded it as Winn-Dixie. In May of 2015, Bi-Lo Holdings changed its name to Southeastern Grocers. During this period, many Winn-Dixie locations would be rebranded under other names. On March 15, 2018, Southeastern Grocers filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy reorganization. At this point, more Winn-Dixie locations would close and others sold off to other chains. In March of 2024, Southeastern Grocers sold 400 Winn-Dixie and Harvey supermarket stores to Aldi's. Stores will either remain open under the Winn-Dixie or Harvey's brand or convert to the Aldi format. Today, the future of Winn-Dixie is uncertain. Aldi has acquired Winn-Dixie and will convert many of the stores into Aldi locations over the next several years. The number of Winn-Dixie stores will change as the conversion process takes place. Winn-Dixie operates in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. So what do you remember about this place? Leave a comment or a suggestion for a future video below. And if you haven't already, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.
Bringing back memories from the good old days. That's super cool, man.